Okay, welcome to lecture 16, heat treatment part 2 of engineering metallurgy. In the last class, we have started studying surface heat treatment, and today we're going to continue that. And with that, we're also going to discuss about isothermal transformation diagram, which is called TTT diagram, that means time, temperature, and transformation diagram. And at the end, we'll be talking about ostempering. It's a variation from tempering. Uh, so let's start. We have already talked about this in the last lecture, so I'm not going to talk about them anymore. So we'll directly go to carburizing. Okay, in the case of carburizing, it is a very cheapest method for case hardening, that means for surface heat treatment. And most of the cases, carburizing is used for low carbon steels. In the case of low carbon steels, they contain very small amount of carbon in the iron matrix. But if you want to make the surface hard, then you need to do the surface heat treatment, which is carburizing. Uh, what happens in this case is that the low carbon steels are kept in an environment containing large amount of carbon monoxide. That means the steel is exposed in a carbon monoxide environment where depending on the temperature, carburizing temperature, for example, if it is 1700 degree Fahrenheit, it is not constant. It can be many different temperature can be used. That will actually it will take different time for different temperature. We'll see that. And what happens is that when the iron is exposed in the carbon monoxide environment, then some of the carbon from carbon monoxide diffused into the iron matrix, okay, to form to increase the carbon content of the iron, and the rest of the carbon monoxide actually transforms into carbon dioxide. And it occurs basically by diffusion. The carbon atom actually diffused into the steel structure to increase the carbon content of the surface. And if the carbon content of the surface increases, then hardness also increases. This is one of the surface carburized steel. That means the surface has been carburized. And in here, if you look carefully, it is a low carbon steel, which contains very small amount of carbon. And that is why if you look at the this is the inner side of the specimen. This is the inner side of the specimen, and this is the surface of the specimen. In the case of carburizing, what happens is that carbon atoms diffuse into the structure from the surface, and it depends on the time, how long you keep the iron in that temperature. Depending on the time or in that environment, depending on the time carbon atom diffuses into the structure. And the actual hypoeutectoid steel, that means with a very low amount of carbon in this region, when carbon starts to diffuse, then at the surface there will be huge amount of carbon, and that will contain a large amount of carbon in the iron matrix, and that is called the hypereutectoid zone. That means it has more than 0.8% carbon. And also, since the carbon content will be less, if you move in this direction, then the carbon content will decrease. Okay, and the high amount of carbon on the surface will give you the hypereutectoid zone, and there will be a transition zone where the carbon content will be exactly 0.8% carbon, and this zone will show you a large amount of if you look at the microstructure carefully, then this zone will actually show you a large amount of perlite present in this region. And in the inner core, it will be the same as the initial material. That means that without carburizing the material had the structure or carbon content that had in their structure. So when carburizing occurs, carbon atoms actually diffuses from the surface, and surface will have a large amount of carbon, and then the carbon content will start to decrease. If you move towards the inner surface of the inner side of the material, then at some point it will give you the eutectoid zone, which have 0.8% carbon, and then if you go further, then you will find the like hypoeutectoid zone. That means the actual structure of the material. Okay, any question in here? All right. So what is the effect of time and temperature in the case of carburizing? That means how much depth can be obtained. Okay, if you look at this structure, then this total length is called the total case, because this the total depth that has been affected by the carbon atom diffusion is called the total case, or the hardened surface. You can also say the hardened surface, and this is called the case depth. This total length is called the case depth, and this depth actually depends on the temperature and the time. Okay, so this is the case depth, and this is the carburizing time, how long you are keeping it in the carbon monoxide environment, and these are the various temperatures. At various temperatures, you can conduct the carburizing at various temperatures. For example, if you conduct the carburizing at 1550 degree Fahrenheit temperature, then the case depth increases with the increase of time. Okay. And also, if you want to obtain, for example, 0.8 inch depth, carburizing depth, then you can obtain in three different or four different ways, like in here. Like if you keep it at 1750 degree Fahrenheit, then the carburizing will be completed within 5 hours. Okay, and if you keep it at 1700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, then the carburizing the same depth, that means 0.08 inch depth, will be obtained at about 12 hours. And that's how it will increase. The lower the temperature, higher the carburizing time to obtain a constant case depth or carburizing depth. Okay, any question? So there is a phenomena that is called decarburizing. It also quite common. If the steel is heated in a carbon dioxide environment by a reversible reaction, this occurs by a reversible reaction, and that is called the decarburizing. That means carbon atom diffuses out of the steel. In the case of carburizing, carbon atom diffuses into the steel, and in the case of decarburizing, carbon atoms gets out of the steel. Okay, and in that case, what happens is that the iron with high amount of carbon in the surface reacts with moisture content in the environment, and then the carbon atom gets out and reacts with the oxygen to form carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and iron will be some of the carbon will get out from the carbon, and also the carbon will directly react with the oxygen to form the carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is how the decarburizing occurs. But if decarburizing occurs, then the structure looks like this. On the surface, very brittle structure is formed. That means very high amount of carbon is concentrated in this region with very little or less amount of iron. So the surface of the structure will become very brittle, and that will act like a rust. Okay, and which have corrosive in nature. That means this can be removed very easily. Okay, so it is recommended that the decarburizing should not occur. That means you should not the carburized surface should not be exposed in a carbon dioxide environment for a very long time, or at a high temperature for a very long time. If we do that, then you will have a decarburizing layer on the surface which is very brittle, and it will break down. Okay, any question? So the carburizing can be accomplished by means of three ways. There are three ways to conduct the carburizing: pack carburizing, gas carburizing, and liquid carburizing. These are the methods, various methods of conducting the carburizing. First one is the pack carburizing. In the case of pack carburizing, the work sample is surrounded by carburizing compound in a closed container. A container is closed and the work sample is surrounded or dipped into the carburizing compound, and the container is heated to a proper temperature. At certain temperature you need to heat it up for a required time, and then slow cooled, and cooling should be done very slowly so that diffusion can occur simultaneously. And the commercial carburizing compounds that are used usually are hardwood charcoal, coke, and about 20% barium carbonate as energizer. That barium carbonate actually acts as a catalyst to form carbon from charcoal and coke, and that carbon actually diffuses into the workpiece or into the low carbon steel to form the hardened case. The advantages of this is it does not require use of prepared atmosphere. You don't need to make a carbon monoxide rich atmosphere. It is just charcoal and coke. You place the specimen into the charcoal and coke and then heat it at a certain temperature for certain time to obtain the case depth. And it is efficient and economical for large quantity of small parts and massive parts. If the part is very large, or also if the parts are very small, but a large amount of parts can be carburized at the same time. Okay, these two are the advantages of pack carburizing, but there is also disadvantages. Not well suited for thin carburized case. That means if you want to obtain very small thickness, the hard structure for a small thickness, then it is very difficult to obtain that because the whole object or whole specimen is exposed in a very high carbon content environment, and that is why small very thin carburized case cannot be obtained and cannot provide close control to the surface carbon compared to the gas carburizing. We'll talk about the gas carburizing later, but just to discuss the disadvantages. The close control of the surface carbon. That means how much carbon you want to have in the surface of the steel. You cannot actually control that because there will be huge amount of carbon present on the surface. Okay, controlling is very difficult, and part cannot be directly quenched from the carburizing temperature. Parts cannot be quenched because if you want to quench the part, then you need to take it out from the carbon dioxide environment, which is very difficult at a very high temperature. And the excessive time required for heating and cooling to heat the whole system, it takes really long time. And also cooling, since the cooling needs to be done slowly, so cooling time also requires very high cooling time is required. And not used on work requiring a case depth less than 0.03 inch. If the case depth is required, case depth is 0.03 inch and a very high tolerance of 0.01 inch, then the carburizing is not recommended because you cannot control the carbon diffusion into the material. Okay, any question for pack carburizing? Okay, so the next one is the gas carburizing. In the case of gas carburizing, it's a batch type process, or sometimes it can also be continuous type. And the steel is heated in contact with carbon monoxide or hydrocarbon. Okay, it can be carbon monoxide or hydrocarbon, which is the carburizing compound, and which readily decomposes at carburizing temperature. At carburizing temperature, this hydrocarbon or the carbon monoxide can decompose into carbon and oxygen. And the hydrocarbon may be methane, propane, natural gas, or vaporized fluid hydrocarbon. By using diffusion, surface carbon can be controlled. That means how much surface carbon you want to obtain in the surface heat treated surface can be controlled by controlling the gas generation. And gas carburizing allows quicker handling by direct quenching or lower cost, cleaner surrounding, closer quality control, and greater flexibility of the operation. These are the advantages of gas carburizing. And to talk about the batch type or continuous type is that if you take a certain amount of part and put them in the carbon monoxide environment, after completion you take them out. Or continuous type, if you use a conveyor belt through an environment, carbon monoxide environment, and continuously carburizing occurs, and you take the parts out from another side of the conveyor belt. That is called the continuous type and the batch type. Okay, any question? So the next one is liquid carburizing. Steel is placed into a bath of molten cyanide. Cyanide, you know, CN, cyanide. In the case of molten cyanide bath, you keep the steel pitch in the molten cyanide bath at a certain temperature so that carbon from cyanide will diffuse from the bath into the metal. And the case is higher in carbon and lower in nitrogen compared to cyaniding. Cyaniding is another method for carburizing. So we'll talk about that for case hardening actually. We'll talk about that. But before that, in this case, in the case of liquid carburizing, cyanide is used. In the case of cyaniding, cyanide is used. Okay. But in the case of liquid carburizing, the carbon content is higher compared to nitrogen in the surface of the steel. And the maximum case depth is 0.25 inch case depth can be obtained, and liquid carburizing best suited to small and medium sized parts. Advantages: freedom from oxidation problem, so there is no oxidation issue. Uniform case depth and carbon content can be easily very highly controlled, and rapid rate of penetration. Case depth obtaining time is less to reach the carburizing temperature is also less because liquid cyanide can be heated up very quickly. And disadvantages are must be thoroughly washed after treatment to prevent rusting, and adjustment of bath composition required to achieve uniform case depth, and cyanide salts are poisonous, so it is very dangerous to handle, and some parts cannot be used because of flotation. Some of the parts will float into the surface, so they will not give you the proper carburizing. They need to have the proper means to keep it submerged into the liquid bath. Okay, that's all about the carburizing. Do you have any question?
যত কার্বন তত বেশি হার্ড হবে নাকি একটা সার্টেন অ্যামাউন্ট পর্যন্ত কার্বনের পর হার্ড তারপরে আবার ব্রিটেল হবে এরকম কিছু?
Yeah, definitely. If you introduce a huge amount of carbon, then it will become brittle. Okay, that's what the decarburizing is all about, right? That's what I talked about in the decarburizing. Like if the carbon content comes out of the steel and concentrates on the surface, and huge amount of carbon is present, then carbon is a brittle material. Okay, and when it comes to the surface, then surface becomes brittle. So you need to really control that. Okay.
তো সারফেসে থাকলে হচ্ছে যদি মানে ভিতরের দিকে বেশি কার্বন থাকে তখন কি ব্রিটেল হবে নাকি ঠিক থাকবে?
No. There is no way that you can penetrate a lot of carbon atoms inside the material, right?
Yes, sir.
Whenever a diffusion occurs, the large amount of carbon will be present on the surface, and then they start to diffuse into the metal. Okay. So you need to have a certain amount of carbon, because as you have said, we have seen in the last lecture that the amount of carbon actually affects the various mechanical properties of the steel, right? The higher the carbon content, higher the strength, but at some point tensile strength become constant. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And also when the carbon content increases, then the hardness increases, but at some point the hardness increases, but it becomes very brittle. Okay, then the energy absorption becomes very less. So you need to really control the carbon content. Like if it is more than 2%, then it will become like cast iron. Okay,
Yes, sir.
this is the brittle structure, which will be very hard, but it will be brittle like a structure. So how long you want to keep it in the environment, carbon monoxide or cyanide environment, you have to control that. Otherwise, property will degrade.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other question? All right, so the next one is nitriding. This is done in an environment consisting of a mixture of suitable proportions of ammonia gas and dissociated ammonia. Dissociated ammonia means the ammonium ion. Okay, in the case of ammonia gas, dissociated into ammonia ion, and in that environment, if you keep it in that environment, some of the nitrogen gets diffused into the surface of the structure. Okay, and the effectiveness of the process depends on the formation of nitrides, nitride ion, and in the steel by reaction of nitrogen with certain alloying elements. And this is only penetration of nitrogen is not enough to obtain a hard surface. To obtain a properly hard surface, if the iron has some kind of alloying elements, for example, it can be magnesium, or it can be some other elements like other compounds, chromium. Okay, so those alloying elements will react with nitride to form metal nitride, and that metal nitride will give us the hardened structure on the surface. Okay, so nitriding, only penetration of nitrogen is not enough. It has to react with some alloying elements. Otherwise, nitriding is not applicable. So these are the elements that actually forms nitride: aluminum, chromium, and molybdenum, etc. And nitrogen must be supplied in the atomic form. That means, in the case of dissociated ammonia, nitrogen must be in the atomic form. Okay, that means nitrogen must be dissociated properly from ammonia gas and dissociated ammonia. Then that nitrogen can react with the nitride forming elements to form the hard structure on the surface. And the part placed in an airtight container, it has to be airtight container through which nitriding atmosphere is supplied at a temperature 925 to 1050 degree Fahrenheit. At this temperature, actually, the nitride forming elements react with the nitrogen to form a hard structure. And nitriding cycle is quite long. It takes a very long time, like 60 hours for case depth of 0.024 inch at 975 degree Fahrenheit. So it is a very time consuming method, and the properties obviously better compared to carborundum. Okay, it takes longer time, but the hardness properties are improved. So this is some example microstructure of nitriding. In the case of nitriding, what happens? An interesting thing actually occurs is that when you expose the steel into the nitriding environment, the nitrogen, when concentrates on the surface, a white layer is produced. That white layer is very brittle. Okay. Because there is huge amount of nitrogen in the iron structure, and it is very brittle surface. And by the time, when the time is very long, for a long time, this nitrogen actually reacts with the surface, of that is alloy forming elements like aluminum, molybdenum, or chromium, to form the nitride. Once the nitride is formed, a small layer of nitride is formed in here. Okay, and that layer actually provides the higher hardness, and the rest of the layer has to be removed from the surface, because this is a very brittle layer. Okay, and this is another example, like at 100x magnification. This is 500x magnification, and in this case, this diamond-like structure is basically the Vickers hardness test has been conducted on this surface. So the Vickers hardness will be less. Longer the diagonal, the hardness is less, so it is almost similar length diagonals. But as you move to the surface, then diagonal actually starts to reduce. That means the hardness is higher in the surface. Okay, that's how the nitriding works. Okay, any question for nitriding?
স্যার নাইট্রাইটের অ্যাডভান্টেজটা কি?
Advantage is you get a very high hardness compared to the surface carburized case. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And the last one is cyaniding. In the case of chemical reaction, cyaniding temperature is between 1400 to 1600 degree Fahrenheit and has more nitrogen compared to liquid carburizing. In the case of liquid carburizing, the metal surface has both carbon and nitrogen, but in the case of liquid carburizing, carbon content is much higher than nitrogen content, but in the case of cyaniding or carbonitriding, nitrogen content is higher than the carbon. Okay, so the mixture that is produced for cyaniding is the mixture of 30% sodium cyanide, 40% sodium carbonate, and 30% sodium chloride. So this mixture has to be raised at a temperature of 1400 to 1600 degree Fahrenheit, and then metal has to be exposed in that bath. And when the metal is exposed in that bath, then the the cyaniding occurs. That means sodium cyanide reacts with oxygen to form sodium carbocyanide, and then that actually forms sodium carbonate, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen. And this nitrogen actually penetrates into the surface and reacts with the same way as the nitriding occurs. That means this nitrogen actually reacts with the alloy forming element, nitride forming elements, and then forms aluminum nitride or chromium nitride to form a hard structure, as well as this carbon dioxide that is present in there that also releases some carbon into the metal structure. So carbonitriding is basically introducing both nitrogen and carbon into the surface of the material to get a hard surface. Steel is heated at a gaseous in the case of the cyaniding has there are two methods actually. The first method is cyaniding method, and second method is the first method that I have described is cyaniding, and second method is carbonitriding. In this case, steel is heated in a gaseous atmosphere of such condition that carbon and nitrogen are absorbed simultaneously. This carbon and nitrogen can be it occurs in the gaseous environment, and cyaniding occurs in the liquid environment. Okay, that is the difference between cyaniding and carbonitriding. And this process is also same as also known as nitrocarburizing, dry cyaniding, or gas cyaniding, nicarbing. So there are many different names that can be given in the carbonitriding method when it is done in the gaseous environment. And the atmosphere consists of carrier gas, enriching gas, and ammonia. And the carrier gases are nitrogen, hydrogen, and carbon monoxide. And enriching gases is propane and natural gases. These gases actually act as enriching. That means they enrich the nitrogen and carbon monoxide or hydrogen in the environment. And ammonia dissociates to provide nitrogen to the surface of the steel. Okay. Actually, natural gas provides the carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and ammonia provides nitrogen in the environment, nitrogen and hydrogen in the environment. So these two gases are the enriching gases, natural gases are the enriching gases, and ammonia gives the nitrogen to the surface of the steel. And that's in the gaseous mixture. You introduce the material steel into the gaseous environment in this gaseous environment, and keep it for certain time at certain temperature to obtain the hardened case. And this is one of the example microstructure of the cyaniding or carbonitriding. This is the surface actually, which contains a very large amount of carbon and nitrogen in the surface. But obviously, in this case, nitrogen is more than the carbon. Okay. All right. Any question? Okay, so the next is flame hardening. In this case, there is no reaction occurs. In the other ones, we saw that carbon and nitrogens are reacting with the iron to form the microstructures. But in the case of flame hardening, there is no such methods. No such reaction occurs in the case of flame hardening. It is very simple method. Selected area of the surface of a steel are heated into austenite range and then quenched to form martensite. It is basically hardening method, but instead of hardening the whole structure, only surface is hardened. Okay, the steel of carbon percentage is like 0.3 to 0.6% are usually used. Heat may be applied by a single oxyacetylene torch, and the depth of case may be controlled by an adjustment of the flame intensity. That means the flame temperature, heating time, and speed of travel, flame travel can be adjusted to obtain various case depth. If you keep heating a surface for a long time, then the case depth will be higher, and if you heat it for less time, then the case depth will be lower. And the 4 methods may be used like stationary, progressive spinning. So stationary methods means if you have a metal in here and you have a torch in this location and you have got flames, you keep this torch stationary in that place, and then the surface gets heated and a certain depth becomes hot enough to form austenite. All the microstructure will be austenite, and you remove the torch and then suddenly quench it. Then the surface will be hardened. That is the stationary. And the progressive, that means once it is done, then you progress it to the another surface. And the spinning, that means you heat it up by spinning the torches. And progressive spinning, you spin like a spiral like movement. You spin the torch and as well as you move forward. Okay, these are the various just working methods for flame hardening. Here is one of the example for flame hardening. In this case, the flames are introduced through these small orifices in here into the gear surface. Once the microstructure is the austenite is formed, then the flame is removed and then the gear is quenched in the molten bath. So the surface of the gear teeth will be hardened, but internally there will be it will not be, internal surface will not be affected by the flame hardening. This is how we conduct the flame hardening on the surface of the steel. Okay, any question?
স্যার গিয়ার ছাড়া আর কি অ্যাপ্লিকেশন আছে
There can be
flame
many different surfaces you can do the hardening. Actually, in the case of flame hardening, most of the cases gears or the shafts. You know, the shaft surfaces. Shafts are often subjected to wear because of the continuous rotation and inside the bearing. Okay, and also the bearing surface. In the case of bearing, there is ball, right? Balls
Yes, sir.
move surface. So the bearing surfaces can also be hardened, and the ball surfaces can also be hardened by the flame hardening method. Or you can also use whichever is economical. Okay, you can use that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So next one is the induction hardening. This is the induction heating method can be used to obtain the surface hardened surface, and localized heating produced by currents induced in a metal placed in a rapidly changing magnetic field to produce the induction heating. And there are 5 basic design for induction heating. The various different methods can be used. If you want to harden the surface of a cylinder, then you can use like this kind of heating method. The surface gets heated to form austenite and then suddenly quenched. Then you get the hardened surface, and this is the heating pattern actually. And in the case of internal surface hardening, you can keep the magnetic field like this, and then you heat up the internal surface. The internal surface will be heated up, and surface will be hardened, and also this heating pattern. You keep the heating element constant, fixed, and then you rotate the cylinder and move up and down. Then you get this kind of heating on the surface. So many different methods can be used, and this is the type G is the surface heating method will be like this. Okay, the heater will be kept constant, and the material will be moved, like rotated around, and also translation can also be done from up and down can be done. And then once the austenite is formed, then you can quench it to obtain the surface hardness. And also, if you have a plain surface, then you can use this heating element to obtain the heating on the surface to conduct the heat treatment on the surface of the material. Okay, any question? So this is all about surface hardening. There are 5 different methods that we have studied for surface hardening, and like we have talked about carburizing, 3 types of carburizing: nitriding, cyaniding, and the flame hardening method, and also induction hardening. So these are the methods. First 3 is about chemical reaction, and last 2 is about the direct surface hardening, that means hardening method that has been used. And now we want to start the isothermal transformation diagram, which is called the TTT diagram. That means at a constant temperature, when austenite transformed into various products, that is called the transformation. And TTT means time, temperature, and transformation. And that is why, since the time, temperature, the transformation depends on the time and temperature, so that is why it's called TTT diagram, time, temperature, transformation diagram, and also called isothermal transformation diagram, that means IT diagram. Okay. So what is the basic for development of IT diagram? The basic is that iron carbide equilibrium diagram is not applicable in the case when we if the slow cooling is not conducted. It means if the slow cooling is not conducted, then iron carbide diagram will not give you the proper prediction of the final product. That means how much pearlite is present, how much ferrite is present, how much martensite is present. You cannot obtain that from the iron carbide diagram. So we need to have a different diagram which can give us proper insight when we cool the steel at a various cooling rate to obtain different structure, and that those structure can be predicted using TTT diagram. Okay. And time and temperature of austenite transformation have a strong influence on transformation products and properties of the steel. You have already seen that time and temperature is very crucial in the case of transformation from austenite to various products. If the various products are produced, that means various percentage of pearlite or ferrite or martensite, depending on the percentage of these products, the properties of the steel are changed. Okay, so this has a significant effect on the properties of the steel. And the study of transformation of austenite at a constant subcritical temperature is also important. Austenite is a very unstable structure that eventually transforms into a stable product like ferrite or alpha iron, pearlite, alpha plus beta, or iron carbide, Fe3C. So these are the products of steel. Okay, when you cool the steel, but when this transformation, gamma iron always transforms into either alpha plus beta, or iron carbide. Okay, so it is very important to understand that when austenite is kept at a certain temperature, then what happens? Okay, and the various products can be produced for when austenite is kept at different temperatures. And what are the properties of those products? To understand this, we need to understand the isothermal transformation diagram. And also, it is necessary to know how long it will take to start the transformation. That means, whenever you keep austenite at a certain temperature, it will not start to transform immediately. It might take some time to start the transformation. We also need to know that because of the production, to optimize the economy, that means how much to optimize the production cost. Okay, and that is all. That will this will also give you the insight how long it will take to start the transformation, how long it will take to be transformed completely, and the nature of the transformation product, and what product has been produced after transformation from austenite. That is also can be understood from the isothermal transformation diagram. Okay. So, any question? And to best way to understand the isothermal transformation diagram is to understand how this diagram is produced. Okay, and there are some steps for production for developing a isothermal transformation diagram. It is and first step is the preparation of large number of samples of small cross section. For a very small cross section, large number of sample has to be produced for a certain steel. Okay. For example, if you consider a eutectoid steel which has 0.8% carbon, you need to produce a large amount of small cross-section samples, and placing the samples at proper austenitizing temperature. That means above the lower critical temperature, above the above the upper critical temperature, all the steel will be transformed into austenite, and you have to ensure that the whole material has been whole sample has been transformed to the austenite. Okay, and then step 3 is placing the sample in a molten salt bath held at a constant subcritical temperature. Okay, and the sample has to be placed in the molten salt bath of constant temperature. Okay, for example, let's say 700 degrees Celsius temperature, 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature. You keep the samples, and after varying time interval, each sample is quenched in cold water or ice brine. Let's say you have 100 samples, 100 samples, all 100 samples you have produced austenite, and then all 100 samples you put them at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature molten salt bath, and then after 10 seconds you take one sample out and quench it in the ice brine or cold water, quench it in the cold water to form martensite, and after 20 seconds you take another sample out and quench it in the cold water. After 1 minute you take another sample, after 5 minutes you take another sample. Like this you continue to take out 100 samples and quench them in the cold water. After that you check for hardness and study microscopically. That means you check the hardness of the material after quenching for all samples, and also you check the microstructure of all the samples to ensure how much martensite has been produced. Okay, and step 6 is the repeatation of this at a different temperature. This steps has been done at 700 degrees Celsius temperature, and you have to do it again in, let's say, 800 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, or 1200 degree Fahrenheit temperature, or 200 degree or 400 degree. At various temperature you have to repeat these steps. Okay, and that's how you get, like let's say there is 10 different temperatures. You have conducted all these experiments, and then you will understand how much how long does it take for transforming austenite to useful products like perlite or cementite or ferrite or whatever it is. And at 700 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit temperature, how do you quantify whether austenite has been transformed into martensite or not? To quantify that, you need to study microscopically. For example, in the molten salt bath at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, there the first sample, you kept all 6 samples. After 30 seconds, you take one sample out. Sample 1, you take the sample 1 out and quench it in the cold water. And after examining the microstructure, you saw that after quenching, you saw that there is 100% martensite in the microstructure. If there is 100% martensite in the microstructure, that indicates that all the austenite has been transformed into martensite. That means austenite did not produce any other product. That means within 30 seconds, no transformation has been occurred. Okay. If you see 100% martensite, that means there is no transformation for 30 seconds. After 6 hours, you take the second sample out and quench it in the cold water. And after studying the microstructure, you saw that there is 95% martensite and 5% perlite. That means after 6 hours, of keeping the sample into 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, molten bath, 5% perlite has been produced. Transformation has been started, and 5% perlite is produced. So the microstructure is showing there is 95% martensite and 5% perlite. That means after 6 hours, only 5% austenite has been transformed into perlite. And in the same way, after 18 hours of keeping in the molten bath, you take out and quench it in the cold water, and after studying the microstructure, you see that there is 75% martensite and 25%, this will be 25% perlite. That means after 18 hours, only 25% austenite has been transformed into perlite. Okay, so this is how you do the quantification, like how much perlite is transforming and how long it is taking to transform the product. And this is applicable only for 1080 steel. That means 0.8% carbon steel. Okay, all the products are perlite. But if it is less than 0.8% carbon, it will not be only perlite. There will also be some ferrite will also be produced. Okay. Okay. Any question?
স্যার মলটেন সল্ট বাতে যতক্ষণ রাখা হবে পারলাইটের সংখ্যা কি বাড়তে থাকবে?
Yes, definitely. That's what the transformation is all about. That means if you keep it at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, austenite transforms into perlite because it is 0.8% carbon steel. Okay, and longer you keep it, at some point, like after 66 hours, you get 100% perlite. That means all the austenite has been converted into perlite at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question? Okay. Let's see how to generate the isothermal transformation diagram. And this is the graphic microstructural illustration. Like after 30 seconds, you get only 5% perlite, and rest of them are martensite. After like 18 hours, there is 25% perlite, and after a longer time, like 36 hours, you get 50% perlite. Okay, that is showing the 50% perlite and rest 50% martensite. And if you keep it for longer time, then you'll get more perlite, and at some point you'll get 100% perlite. Okay, so you need to plot this graph actually, like after at what time how much perlite has been transformed. You get this graph. That means the transformation is started after this time. Okay, and transformation finished at this time. Okay, that's why you need to have a a lot of sample has to be tested to get this single graph. And this graph is not the isothermal transformation diagram. This graph is only showing how much perlite has been transformed, how much austenite has been transformed into perlite, and how long does it take to conduct the complete transformation at a constant temperature of 700 degree Fahrenheit. And you need to obtain this type of graph for various temperatures to get the isothermal transformation diagram. Okay, that means you get this curve like transformation per product percentage. That means perlite percentage in here and austenite percentage in here. Okay, that means transformation is started at this time. Okay, at this time transformation is started, and at this time 50% transformation has been done, and at this time 100% transformation is done. So from this graph you need to have actually 2 points, okay, or you can have like 3 points, like when the transformation is started, the beginning of transformation, ending of transformation, and 50% transformation time. Okay, and all this occurred at 700 degree Fahrenheit. So you have a coordinate system of temperature versus time. In this coordinate system at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you plot 3 points. One point is beginning of transformation, that is here. Another point is 50% transformation is complete in here. How long does it take? And another is ending, and how long it took to completely transform into 100% perlite. That is the third point. So at 700 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you get these 3 points. Then similarly at 1000 degree Fahrenheit, you will get 3 points, 1 point here, 1 point here, and 1 point here. And let's say at 400 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you get 3.1 here, 1 here, and another 1 here. Okay. And also at 1300 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you get 1 point here, another point here, and another point here. Okay. And after connecting the starting point of the transformation, starting time of the transformation, you connect all the points to get a line. You connect 50% transformation points to get another line, and you get 100% transformation points to get another line. Okay, once you obtain all these 3 lines, then this graph is called isothermal transformation diagram. Okay, did you understand how to construct the TTD diagram?
Yes, sir.
Isothermal.
Okay, so to construct a isothermal transformation diagram, you need to conduct a lot of study. That means lot of experimental works has to be done to generate one isothermal diagram. Okay, and this diagram is very important in the case of heat treatment, or to understand what product you are going to obtain in what cooling rate. Okay, I'll discuss that. And what would be the mechanical property that can also be predicted from this isothermal transformation diagram. And we are only studying the eutectoid steel, okay, 0.8% carbon steel. So when the transformation occurs at a very high temperature, then the product that is formed is actually coarse perlite, which have a Rockwell hardness very small, like 15 Rockwell hardness number. And as you drop the temperature of transformation, you get medium perlite, fine perlite, but hardness is increasing. Okay, upper feathery bainite, lower or acicular bainite, which is 60, and at some point you get 100% martensite, which have high hardness. Okay. Okay, and for martensite transformation, if you once austenite is formed, 100% austenite above this critical temperature, you get 100% austenite. And if you keep those product or steel, 100% austenitic steel, into at a temperature of 350, then you will get 50% martensite will be produced. Okay, and rest of them will be transformed into other products. And if you keep it at a temperature of 250, then 90% martensite will be produced. And if you keep it less than 200 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit temperature, 100% martensite will be produced. And 100% martensite will show you a greatest hardness of 64. Okay, and this will not show you the greatest hardness of 64. Okay, the last one we have seen for the 0.8% steel or eutectoid steel that actually produces only perlite. Okay, but when you use a low carbon steel like 0.5% carbon steel, then you will not get only perlite. You will also get another line. You will get another line in here, that is 50% transformation. Okay, of perlite transformation. And you'll get another line which will show you the formation of ferrite. If indicates ferrite, that means at a certain temperature, let's say for 1300 degrees Celsius temperature, at this point and this point, there will be 3 points. From this point to this point, transformation occurs, and austenite actually transforms into ferrite. Okay, austenite transforms into ferrite, and after this point, eutectoid reaction takes place, and rest of the austenite actually transforms into perlite. Okay, so the final microstructure at this point will consist of some grains of ferrite, and rest of the grains will be perlite. Okay, that's how it transforms into the high carbon steel in the case of low carbon steel. And for the martensite transformation, as I said in the last slide, is that if the quenching bath temperature, this indicates the quenching bath temperature, the ordinate, and the x-axis indicates the percentage martensite observed. Like if you quench it at 400 degree Fahrenheit temperature, then we'll get only very small amount of martensite. Okay, very small amount of martensite will be produced. If you quench it at 350, then you get a little bit more martensite. If you quench it less than 250, like less than 200 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you get 100% martensite will be produced. Okay, we have already talked about this, so let's move to the next one. So these are the microstructures at 1500x magnification. At 1300 degree Fahrenheit, there will be the perlite that will be produced. Like for example, in here, the coarse perlite will be produced. That means the plates will be very thicker plates of alpha and beta iron will be produced in the case of 1300 degree Fahrenheit. And if you drop the temperature, more finer structure you will get. That means the alpha and beta iron plates will be thinner, and less temperature, more thinner indicates like fine perlite, and finally you will get feathery bainite, feathery perlite. Okay, the last one is I guess upper or feathery bainite, fine perlite. Last one is fine perlite, and the medium perlite will be these ones. Okay, that means if you decrease the temperature of transformation, you will get finer structure. Okay, that means finer perlite will be produced. And bainite transformation, in the case of if you drop the temperature further, then you will get like feathery bainite. Okay, feathery bainite will produce more finer structure. But if you drop the temperature further at 850 degree Fahrenheit, then you will get bainite, and bainite will have, like in the ferrite matrix, there will be plates of distorted face-centered cubic structure. Okay, and and this is called the bainite. And it will be the lower bainite, and then 500 degree Fahrenheit temperature, there will be another type of bainite which will show different orientations. The microstructure will organize in a different orientation, okay, to get another type of bainite. Okay, so these are the products that is produced, and this product will have different mechanical properties as seen from this here, like coarse perlite has 15 Rockwell hardness number, and feathery bainite has 40, and lower bainite has 60, and martensite will have 64. So these are the products that can be produced at different temperature, transforming austenite into useful products at different temperature. And what is the effect of cooling rate? Okay, that's we also need to know what is the effect of cooling rate. Like if you do the very slow cooling or annealing, that actually resembles a cooling rate of this. Number 1 cooling rate actually represents the annealing method. In this case, you will get coarse perlite for 0.8%. Obviously, this is for 0.8% carbon steel. Okay, you will get coarse perlite. It is similar to the annealing. And second one, isothermal annealing, is like if you put it at a constant temperature. Okay, it is also annealing, but you keep it at a constant temperature, and transformation occurs constantly. Okay, and it produces medium perlite. Okay, you keep it at a certain temperature for a long time, when 100% transformation complete, and the perlite will show a bit of higher hardness. And number 3 cooling rate here, this number 3 cooling rate actually indicates normalizing. In the case of normalizing, you'll have coarse perlite, fine perlite. Okay, the perlite plates will be thickness will be smaller. Okay, and this resembles the normalizing. And 4 is the oil quenching. Okay, for if you quench it in the oil, then you'll get this cooling rate, and this cooling rate will give you fine perlite of 40 hardness. Okay, transformation starts at this point and transformation finishes at this point. That means this is the time required for complete transformation. Okay, and number 5 is intermediate cooling. In the case of intermediate cooling, this is important. Okay, you need to really understand this. At number 5 cooling rate, up to this X5 dash point, austenite transforms into perlite. But after that, transformation ceases. That means there is no transformation anymore. Transformation does not occur. Perlite formation is produced, and then this is austenite. Okay, and rest of the austenites will continue to remain austenite. And when the temperature is less than martensite forming temperature, then it forms martensite. That means in the case of intermediate cooling, some of the grains will be perlitic grains, and rest of the grains will be martensite. If you look at the microstructure here, this microstructure is for intermediate cooling rate. That means these grains are actually perlite, and rest of the grains will be martensite. Okay, and transformation ceases at this point, and this is called the nose region. Okay, this line, above this line, only perlite transformation occurs, and below this line there is no transformation. Okay, there is no transformation. And when the cooling rate is 6, or hardening cooling rate, this is number 6. At this cooling rate, 100% martensite will be produced. That is, no transformation will occur from this to that, and at this temperature, the transformation will occur, and full martensite will be produced, and that is called the hardening. And this number 7 is the critical cooling rate. We talked about this critical cooling rate when we studied the hardening. Okay, The critical cooling rate is the cooling rate below, above which, the cooling rate above which, that means the higher cooling rate, then this one, this critical cooling rate will give you 100% martensite. No other products will be produced. Okay, and this 7 cooling rate actually goes through the nose region, and there is no transformation, and the transformation that will occur, only martensite will be produced. Okay, and the question is how to obtain bainite. All this structure above this and below martensitic range, we have seen that. But what about these products? There are some other products, right? So these products we need to also obtain these products. How to obtain that? In the constant cooling rate, you cannot obtain this. To obtain that, you need to avoid the nose region. Okay, you need to set a cooling rate which is which does not intersect with the nose region. That means higher cooling rate, and keep it at a certain temperature. Let's say you keep it at this temperature, then the transformation will take place and bainite will be produced. So if you want to obtain both perlite and bainite, then you apply the cooling rate of 5. Some perlite will be produced in this region. Then rest of the austenite, you keep it at a certain temperature, like at this temperature, and then rest of the austenite will be transformed into bainite. So that is how you can obtain both perlite and bainite, a mixture of perlite and bainite. Okay, and also if you want to obtain both 3 structures like perlite, bainite and martensite, all 3 structures, then you have to apply the cooling, obtain certain amount of perlite, and then you keep it at certain temperature. You get 25% bainite. When the 25% bainite is produced, and then you quench it. Then you quench it to obtain martensite. So applying this type of cooling, sudden cooling to get perlite, and then keep it at a certain temperature to obtain bainite, and then quench it to the cold water to obtain martensite. So 3 different microstructures can also be obtained by controlling the cooling of steel. Okay. So any question?
স্যার 0.5% কার্বনের যে ম্যাটেরিয়ালটা ছিল সেটায় 50%টা একটা জায়গায় যে শেষ হয়ে গিয়েছিল, সেখান থেকে ফেরাইটটা উৎপন্ন হচ্ছিল, তো ওই লাইনটা কি সেখানেই শেষ?
This one? Are you talking about this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This line, right? Are you talking about this
Yes,
line or this line? This line?
Sir, 50%টা শেষ হয়ে গেছে।
In
জি স্যার,
here?
this one.
No, it is not the end actually. Okay, that 50% actually continues. Okay, it will continue.
Okay, sir.
All right. Okay, any question in here in the case of TTT diagram? All right, if you do not have any question, then move forward. So next one is the Ostempering. So in the case of Ostempering, it is slightly different than tempering. Okay, Ostempering is done to obtain a structure which is 100% bainite. Okay, so do you understand now what is Ostempering? It is the cooling, avoiding the nose region and keeping it at a certain temperature to obtain bainite. If the 100% bainite is obtained, that is called the Ostempering. And it is done by heating the part to proper austenitizing temperature, followed by cooling rapidly in a salt bath held in the bainite range. Okay, you keep it at the bainitic range, then transformation will take place. And the part left in the bath until the transformation is complete, and the steel is forced to go directly from austenite to bainite. There is no other product, only bainite will be used. It is a complete heat treatment with no reheating for tempering. You don't have to do the tempering again. It is tempering has been done already. And the only limitation for ostempering is the mass of the part being heated. If the part is very large, then ostempering is not possible. Okay. And less than 0.5 inch thick is most suitable for ostempering. Otherwise, ostempering is very difficult. So to understand the ostempering, you need to cool it to a certain temperature and form the austenite. And for tempering, you cool it to form 100% martensite, and then you heat it up at certain temperature, then you get the transformation of martensite to bainite. Okay, that is how the tempering works. Ostempering is done at the same time. It's a continuous process, and for tempering you need to do the hardening first and then raise the temperature to a certain temperature to transform the hardened martensite into bainite. Okay, that's how tempering works. Ostempering is always better than tempering. How? If you want to know that, then we need to compare the mechanical properties. For Raphael C hardness, similar, 49.850, ostempering and regular tempering. Okay, almost similar. And ultimate tensile strength, similar. But elongation, if we talk about elongation, that means how much elongation is occurred, it's 3.75 and it is 5. That means ostempered product has large amount of energy absorption capacity than tempered product. Reduction of area is also higher, 46.4. In here it is only 26. That means a large amount of energy absorption capacity. And impact energy absorption only 14 and 36.6. So ostempering structure gives better impact energy absorption. And free bend test, if you just bend it, ruptured at 45-degree angle. At 45-degree angle, it gets ruptured, but greater than 150-degree without rupture for austenizing. Okay. For ostempered structure, you can obtain greater than 150 degrees bending, but in the case of tempered, Queensland tempered, you get very small amount of bending, and elongation is very small, and slow bending, you get a huge bending can be done, but in the case of only tempering, a very small amount of bending, it breaks down. Okay, so overall, if you talk about compare the tempering, general tempering and ostempering, then ostempering always shows better temperament, that means energy absorption capability compared to tempered product. Okay, because of the heating, the way of heating the structure or a way of obtaining the microstructure. Okay, any question? Okay, so this is the last lecture actually, and we will have another lecture when we do the review classes. That will be about the tutorial. Okay, that will be about the tutorial. That means for phase diagram type 1, type 2, type 3, there are some questions that needs to be solved, or you need to have a tutorial for that. To how to generate those diagrams and how to quantify various structure. We'll talk about that in that tutorial when we do the review classes. Okay, and this is all for this is the end of this engineering metallurgy lecture. So I would suggest you to review all the classes from YouTube so that you can get good understanding, and also during the review class, you can ask some questions, or you can clarify yourself. If you have any questions or doubts, you can also clarify them in the review class. Okay. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, You can also ask me through emails or through direct contact. And also you might have to attend some more class tests. And also I think there will be the 90 marks evaluation will be completed. So you really need to study all these lectures so that I will give you the syllabuses for class tests and also quizzes or any other assignments that I would like to give you. So I hope you keep continuing your study so that you don't get distracted and you get good grades in the 90 marks evaluation. Okay, that's all for from my side to you for the suggestion of this course. So please keep continuing your study, and whenever you get time, try to review the lectures. And if you have any problem, just feel free to ask me through emails, through direct contact, or through Google Classroom.